Because aren't you guys like bored now? Shouldn't we do something that's more exciting? Talk about sex. Yes? Yes? Okay. So there's like all these, this is pretty cool. There's basically, pages and pages of things that men should know about sex and things that women should know about sex. And he says, basically the mutually satisfying intercourse, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, because there's intercourse on all levels. You can have intercourse, and the sensory human being can actually have intercourse on all levels. Everything's an intercourse. So I'm just going to put my little granny thing away. Hold on, so I can have my little, okay. Before we talk about intercourse. So everything's an intercourse, and all intercourse starts where? In the pituitary glands. I thought you guys were going to say porn, and I was going to say no. But that's where most people, most men particularly, but women too, that's where we're basically, all of kind of our understanding of sex comes from either like some really weird, rigid, sexual education, or like some very bizarre conversation we had with our parents, and then the rest is like up to us. Or, there's no understanding of the healing of sex. And, although one of the great sages and yogic masters gave us sexual healing, Marvin Gaye. But what's interesting about the sound current of sexual healing is that he actually hit a sound current that is connected to the sound of the sensory experience of an intercourse, a healing intercourse. That's why that song got so, besides the, kind of risque of the thing, but the sound current actually is connected to this kind of sexual healing. So Yogi Bhajan said a couple of things about this. He said to have mutually satisfying intercourse, which could be, intercourse on all sorts of levels, there are certain conditions which have to be met. And one of them is that you have not eaten for 2.5 hours beforehand, which is kind of opposite of the way we do it, right? We go out to eat, and then, maybe there's 2.5 hours, but there needs to be, an empty stomach is really important, because why? The psychomagnetic field that can happen in any kind of intercourse, whether it's any relationship, any kind of, as we discussed this morning, the kind of experience of everything has a psychomagnetic field, and depending on the strength of your nervous system and the strength of kind of your ability to move the weather pattern of your psychomagnetic field will then depend on how enjoyable it is when you come into contact with other people's psychomagnetic fields. Either it's, an irritant, or no matter what their behavior is, enjoyable. That means you're enlightened. Okay, so you have 2.5 hours. If your body energy is centered in the digestive tract, then the actual kind of intercourse will cause you a lot of problems. The other thing he said is that you have to clear the bowels. And then thirdly, you must give yourself 2 to 3 hours of time in the actual intercourse. Sexual healing. I think that's, those are 3 conditions that, like, think about when's the last time you did any of those for your so one of the things that Yogi Bhajan did so beautifully is that he gave a science behind all of the things we do as householders, from eating to having sex to talking to each other, communicating on whatever level, to money, to to parenting, to work, to everything that we do, just householders. He gave the science, the yogic science of how to create a life where everything that you're doing is not depleting you, it's actually invigorating you. And that is the true science of self-healing. That everything that you're doing because think about the Taoist, we'll follow this sex thing down the path here for a minute. the Taoist kind of configurations around sex, and I was gonna talk about the Jade Egg in my book, and I took it out because we had kind of a revelation. So the Taoist kind of practices around sex are, for men, you don't ejaculate. For women, there's certain practices like this kind of Jade Egg practice where you use the Jade Egg to, strengthen your muscles, and it helps with orgasm and all this kind of stuff. We're thinking the Taoist kind of medicinal sexual practices came from a political control matrix, basically. And that control matrix was not particularly around the freedom or the power of the psychomagnetic person. So Yogi Bhajan came to the West and he said, Tantra is not, to the men, he said, and women, Tantra is not keeping yourself from ejaculating, because that's basically what people that's become the kind of common. It's the circulatory breath and this certain kind of particularly breath and a way to imagine all these kind of chi generation exercises to keep the man from ejaculating. But his point was that if the aura and the psychomagnetic field of the two individuals, or even in a masturbation kind of setting, this can be a self-healing practice on your own. Either way, I wasn't planning on talking about masturbation, but I just thought, it's kind of hot in here. We got to talk about, it's Kathy's birthday. Happy birthday, Kathy. I was going to take you out to dinner, but... but so whatever it is, whether you're having an intercourse with yourself, which is the whole, that's the major self-healing practice. I'm not even talking about masturbation. I'm just talking about meditation. All of it is a practice of regeneration and not depleting your energy from yourself. So the way that we do most everything in our culture habitually is a depletion of energy. So the Taoists were like, okay, you don't ejaculate, or you don't, you use kind of this Jade Egg. But our point was that when Hadi and Jivan and I started talking about it, which let me tell you, it was like over a course of some days talking to Hadi Jivan about Jade Eggs was really not I just was like, he would call and he wanted to continue to talk about the Jade Eggs, and I was like, like talking to, Hadi Jivan about the Jade Eggs. We had long conversations, but he made a very good point, and it's the same with this ejaculation thing, because Yogi Bhajan said to the men, it's not about the ejaculation itself. It's about the energy of the intercourse, the psychomagnetic energy, and how kind of scientific and how yogic you can be about keeping the energy flowing through your system so that you're not depleting yourself, whether you're ejaculating or whether you're talking to someone. Some woman came to the Omega thing, and she was in another program, and she said she was just like in this other program, and she just couldn't even keep her eyes open. She just felt like she was totally being vampired upon in this other program. And she just, she kind of was like, I can't, I'm too sensitive to handle the energy. No, I didn't say to her, like, look, girl, don't worry about that. Just get back in there. I just said, come do some Kundalini Yoga, because she was attracted to the thing. But that kind of thought form that I'm too open or sensitive, or, I'm some sort of external action or externalized kind of behavioral pattern of someone else's or mine can deplete me, is the seed of your disease. Because it's not possible. It's a non-reality. Unless you are cooperating in some sort of subconscious, collusion, then it can happen, because then you guys are in collusion to deplete each other. Most people, sex, relationship, what the subconscious interlock between the two people is not bringing out the best in each other, it's depleting each other. So from the whole, it's a macro, micro, from sex, how much there's ejaculation. It doesn't matter how much, from sex to, talking to each other, to the way you spend money, to whatever, all the kind of things that come up in a relationship. You're not bringing out the best in each other, so it's depleting.